11:56 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 11:56 John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, ended his speech in the budget debate earlier, which is on the Hansard website now, here, by saying that the Tories should abandon government and made way for Labour. He told MPs the budget demonstrated that this is increasingly a government without purpose, divided and in disarray, whose confidence is sapped and whose time is up. I just say to them it is better to go with a bit of dignity, just go with a bit of dignity, rather than humiliating disintegration. Labour is ready and willing to form the government that this country needs, rather than this shambles that cannot even be described as a government. McDonnell may be mildly surprised to find that The Economist also thinks Labour could be on the cusp of power. He is the subject of the Bagheho column this week, and it says McDonnell is a hair's breadth away from becoming Chancellor. In a sharp and very readable analysis, it suggests there are at least 4 faces to McDonnell. The most familiar is a Marxist ideologue who got his training in politics in 3 engines of the heart left the National Union of Mine Workers, where he worked as a researcher, the Greater London Council, where he served as deputy leader under Red Ken Livingstone until he was sacked for being too hardline, and the campaign group of left-wing MPs, where he first forged links with Mr. Corbyn. Yet the closer he gets to power, the more honest John plays down his Marxist youth, which somehow lasted until he was in his 60s, and plays up 3 other images instead. The first is the ever-so-sensible bank manager. The second is a main European social democrat. Mr. McDonnell likes to emphasize that his preferred policies, such as higher public spending and public ownership of the utilities, are centrist stuff in continental Europe. This is disingenuous, as Mr. McDonnell, a long-standing opponent of the European Union as a capitalist club, knows. The third is the new thinker determined to rewrite the rules of our economy for a world of smart machines and destabilizing capital flows. In Labour eyes, The Economist is essentially the neoliberalism gazette, and, overall, the profile is not a flattering one. Bagheho concludes that the Marxist McDonnell is probably the most real one, and it says the city is even more petrified of Chancellor McDonnell than of a hard Brexit. But it also depicts him as a figure with real clout. McDonnell also has the makings of an especially powerful Chancellor. Mr. Hammond is hamstrung by his poor relations with Theresa May, who made no secret of wanting to get rid of him if the June election had gone to plan. Mr. McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn have been joined hip and thigh for 35 years, united both by shared politics and by complementary skills. Mr. Corbyn is an idealist who cultivates an image of sanctity. Mr. McDonnell is an ideologue who gets things done. A future Labour government will be more of a McDonnell than a Corbyn one. John McDonnell Wright and Jeremy Corbyn. Photograph PA updated at 2:23 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Facebook, Twitter, Google+, 11:19 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 11:19 Severin Carrell. Nicola Sturgeon's minority government has dropped plans to cut air passenger duty in Scotland by tens of millions of pounds from next April, at the same as it wrestles with significant problems funding its election promises, particularly lifting the public sector pay cap and a £500 million plus inflation increase in health spending. In a footnote to yesterday's UK budget papers, the Treasury said it had agreed to Scottish Government requests to postpone the devolution of APD from the 1st of April 2018, so the UK Government will continue to control the tax in Scotland, paying Holyrood its share through the block grant. The Scottish National Party had pledged at successive elections to cut the tax, which it was to rename Air Departure Tax ADT, by 50% or about £189 million by the 2021 Holyrood election. But it also promised far higher NHS spending and to increase public sector pay by more than 1%, while dealing with cuts in its Treasury grant. According to Unison, the public sector union, raising public sector pay 2% across the board in Scotland would cost £380 million and by 3%, £560 million. Unison and the PSC Civil Service Union want a 5% rise. Derek Mackay, the Scottish Finance Secretary, told the Herald he had called the Treasury on Tuesday to seek postponement. In early October he blamed the latest EU rules on state aid for his delay in a decision of ADT, which would apparently prevent the Scottish Government from keeping a lifeline exemption from APD for flights to Scottish islands in place since 2001 if it changes air duty. But crucially for Mackay and Nicola Sturgeon, the deal will help relieve intense pressure on the Scottish budget, which will be unveiled on the 14th of December, and reduce the need for Sturgeon to call for higher taxes. It is thought Mackay faced a £600 million spending black hole earlier this autumn, which the Chancellor's budget yesterday has helped slightly relieve. And cancelling an ADT cut will also make it much easier for the Scottish Green Party to vote for this budget. They had pledged to vote against it if air duty was cut. The SNP is 3 votes short of a Holyrood majority. 6 Green votes give it a much-needed cushion. Facebook, Twitter, Google+, 11:10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 11:10 Fallon urges Treasury to raise national insurance threshold in first Commons speech since resignation. Facebook, Twitter, Google+, 10:08 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 1008 Facebook, Twitter, Google+, 9:55 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 0955 Facebook, Twitter, Google+, 9:20 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 0920 Stamp duty cut all about shoring up political support, says former Treasury Chief Heather Stewart down at the Resolution Foundation's post-budget breakfast roundtable in St. James's Park over croissants and coffee this morning. Former Treasury Permanent Secretary Nick now Lord McPherson had some waspish words about the Chancellor's stamp duty cut for first-time buyers. The Independent Office for Budget Responsibility found that the main beneficiaries of the stamp duty cut would be existing homeowners, because it will inflate prices. But McPherson, who oversaw many budgets, said Hammond won't mind too much about that. He said, "I wouldn't get too hung up on the impact on transactions and first-time buyers. This is a relieving tax on the government's core supporters. The vast majority of young people can't afford to buy any house and probably won't for many years to come, but the proportion of the population who can no doubt with the help of their parents stump up the odd £250,300 is the sweet spot of Tory Middle England. So people who claim it's bad value for money get it slightly wrong. It's all about shoring up political support." On the wider budget package, he said, "There are some perfectly sensible policies in this budget. The sad thing is they will have very little impact because they are so small. It's a perfectly reasonable political choice. You've got to fill up a budget speech, and there's always that choice between one big measure and spreading your largesse rather more thinly, and that is what the Chancellor has done. Makes perfect sense in political terms, perhaps less sense in economic terms." Nick McPherson. Photograph PA Facebook, Twitter, Google+, 9:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 0901 IFS says budget shows UK in danger of losing 2 decades of earnings growth. Facebook, Twitter, Google+, 8:22 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 0822 IFS says budget does not mark end of austerity. IFS at IFS Budget 2017 analysis. Yesterday's budget was more about the OBR's forecasts than it was the Chancellor's policy decisions. The forecasts for productivity, earnings and economic growth make pretty grim reading. https://9nickbb8pic.twitter.com 8 Magissa 2 and 3 November 23, 2017 IFS at the IFS Budget 2017 analysis. Before any policy changes, borrowing is now forecast to be £12 billion higher in 2021-22 than was forecast in March. The Chancellor's response was not to turn the fiscal screws even tighter. https://9nickbb8pic.twitter.com NFGressives November 23, 2017 IFS at the IFS Budget 2017 analysis. This is not the end of austerity. There are still nearly £12 billion of welfare cuts to work through the system, while day-to-day public service spending is still due to be 3.6% lower in 2022-23 than it is today. https://9nickbb8pic.twitter.com 05 UVS 9 LFG November 23, 2017 IFS at the IFS. The UK is currently growing more slowly than other advanced economies. The immediate effects on households are already being felt. IFS Budget 2017 analysis. Read more here. https://9nickbb8pic.twitter.com 95 Kuwait LV November 23, 2017 Facebook, Twitter, Google+, 8:17 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 0817 Facebook, Twitter, Google+.